Greetings, everyone. How hard is the Old Testament to read? Do you find it difficult? Because I certainly do. I never know with the Old Testament if the story is supposed to be historical or if it's supposed to just be a story to help us understand things. Because, for example, Genesis is said not to be a historical account. Poetic language is used in Genesis that suggests this isn't actually trying to say that everything was created in 7 days, but it's just an explanation of what God did. And perhaps the order of how he did it is correct, but it doesn't mean it's exactly like this. The gospel, for example, is different, right? We generally understand that to be a historical account of Jesus, or four witnesses giving their accounts of Jesus' life and writing things down as they remembered them. But let's take the story of Sodom, for example. That is just really difficult for me to read. Now, obviously, in these times, most people would be offended by the homosexuality aspect, right? They would think it's a homophobic story suggesting that homosexuality is sinful. And in fact, homosexuality is also referred to as sodomy because of Sodom. But that isn't the crazy part for me. Just listen to this story. I'm sure a lot of you know it, but if you just want to get a little refresh, this is what happens in Sodom, right? And I might not be giving you this story in the most detailed way, but this is the key stuff that I remember. Two angels, I think it was two, with the appearance of handsome men, turn up in Sodom and stay at Lot's house. Lot is a man who lives in Sodom with his family, his wife, and two daughters. And it appears that they are the only righteous people in this entire city. So the two angels come to his house, he welcomes them, he lets them stay at his place. And it seems that word gets around the city that these two angels, or these two men, because people don't realize they're angels, they just saw two handsome men. Word gets around that these two men are staying at Lot's house. So suddenly, the entire city shows up at Lot's door. And they start yelling, "Hey, didn't you have two handsome men go in there a while ago? Send them out here so we can have sex with them." Now, I'm going to assume that the city wasn't inhabited only by homosexual men. Because nowadays, sometimes people try to claim, about 10% of people are homosexual, and we look at those figures and we realize they're very far-fetched. They're just trying to make it look like more people are gay. So to have an entire city full of only homosexual men would be very unlikely indeed. And also, just to have an entire city of only men would be unlikely. So again, one would assume when they say everybody, young and old, turned up outside Lot's house, that would be men and women. So maybe it means that women wanted to have sex with those two angels, but also men wanted to have sex with those two angels. And obviously Lot took it as men, or at least he was horrified by the part that men wanted to have sex with them, because he said, absolutely not, you can't have sex with these two men, you're men yourselves, that's a crime, that's an insult to God. Here's an idea, why don't you take my two virgin daughters and do what you want with them? You can have sex with them, you can gang rape them. He didn't say gang rape them, but it does imply that he was prepared to offer his two daughters to a bunch of randy townsfolk and just let them do whatever they want so they can get their satisfaction. That's what Lot did. He took in two men who were complete strangers, who he didn't know, who he just met. And he preferred it that his daughters, who were his own flesh and blood, would go out there and who knows what would happen to them, as long as those men were not sent out there to have homosexual sex. Now, there's nothing written afterwards about the girls actually being sent out there, I believe, so maybe it seems that they did not take that offer. However, the two angel men did say to Lot that he needs to get his entire family out of there because that city is going to be destroyed. And so he did. Lot took his wife, he took his daughters, and they made their way out. Oh, but there was one more thing, that they weren't supposed to turn around and look back as they were leaving. And of course his wife did turn back. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she didn't realize she was doing it. You know, sometimes someone will say, like, don't turn around. And as they're saying it, you're turning around. It's almost like a reaction. You don't even realize you did it before it's too late. But she turned around and she was punished. An odd punishment, really. She was turned into a pillar of salt. I don't quite know why that specific thing. I actually thought there was a positive connotation to salt in the Bible. You are the salt of the earth, i.e. you are the flavor of the earth. You are needed by this earth. But she turned into a pillar of salt. Now, I don't know how long it took Lot and his daughters to get over that, but they kept hightailing it out of there. So maybe he was like, oh, good grief, what happened to my wife? And the daughters were like, Mom, what happened to you? You're a pillar of salt. And then they just kept going because they had to get out of there because the city was being destroyed. And then they found themselves a place to stay. And it seems there was no one in this place. It was rather secluded. It was just them. And they must have been there for a while because eventually the daughters started getting impatient and concerned that there were no other men around, so they wouldn't be able to find themselves husbands and have children and continue the family lineage. So what did they do? Well, they decided they'd have sex with Dad. That makes sense. The older daughter got Lot drunk on wine and slept with him. He didn't even realize it was happening. And then the next night, the younger daughter did the same thing, got him plastered on wine, slept with him. He didn't realize it was happening. And they both got pregnant. And scripture just says they got pregnant and they had his children, and this child was named this and this other child was named that. Doesn't really condemn what actually happened there. And that's where I was thinking, wait, who are the good people again? Because you often read stories in the Old Testament and you start off with, right, these are the good guys. Yeah, I can tell. Clearly these ones are the good ones. And then as you read it further on, you go, wait a second, they don't seem that good at all. I'm confused. Who are the good ones again? The family that was sent out of that city to save themselves because they were the only righteous ones in this vicious, horrible, nasty, sinful city full of sexual deviants ended up being sexual deviants themselves not long afterwards. Literally, the daughters, not long after being saved from this city of sin, decided to commit incest with their own old dad so they could get pregnant. And before that, the wife disobeyed a command from the angel men and got turned into a pillar of salt. So the troubling thing is also that this is not the nuttiest story in the Old Testament. I can do videos later on giving you even crazier stories, but stuff like this I just don't get. Like, I don't see the point of it. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what they're trying to teach about morality, because on one hand they'll say this thing is morally wrong, but then later on something also really morally wrong will happen and they won't seem to condemn that. They'll make it clear that this was wrong because the city got destroyed because of it, but then nothing really happened with the other thing. It just happened and then we move on with the story. What do you think of the story of Sodom? Does it cause you issues when you read it? Does the Old Testament generally cause you issues when you read it? I feel like certain stories in the Old Testament don't ever really seem to get read out during Mass. Unless this happens on weekdays when there aren't as many people in. Because there are certain stories that I have read in the Old Testament that I don't seem to recall ever being read in church. But again, maybe it happened on a weekday when I wasn't in. Because some of those stories are mad. Anyway, folks, leave your comments. What do you think about this story of Sodom? Supposedly Sodom's a real place, so I would think that that means this actually happened. There are claims that Sodom has been found, it's been located, and it looks like it was destroyed by a massive fire. So if that's true, if archaeologists find that to be true, then that would quite possibly verify this as an actual story. That means all this disgusting stuff and all these weird decisions that were made happened. Okay, that's me done. Do let me know what you think about this. Thank you very much for watching the video. Have a blessed day.